Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hope. My name is Tammy Lynn Connors, and this is my YouTube channel and podcast, helping other people evolve. I always tell people it's amazing to me how God, the universe, whatever you want to believe, I know it's God to me, puts people in your life. So a couple weeks ago, I was at Reggae Festival in Las Vegas, and I met this beautiful lady, Bryndee. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you, Tammy.
Good.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, I'm super excited. I came across the booth that she was at, and what was that booth again?
It's the Nowell Family Foundation that I'm a part of, and we're raising money for Bradley's house.
For Bradley's house. Yeah. So I was intrigued by all that. And then I started talking to Bryndee and we talked about hope, and she agreed to come join us, which I'm super excited to hear her story. Now do you live in California?
I do. I'm in Huntington Beach, California.
Okay, nice, nice. So how's the weather out there?
I mean, I can't complain. It's always pretty good. Yeah.
That's what I thought. That's what I thought. Different than Ohio, Michigan weather. We're like bipolar weather. It was 40 on Thursday and then 75 on Friday. So,
Yeah.
we just dress accordingly. So just to let everybody know what my mission and vision with Hope is just to help people that feel like they're struggling alone, especially in this world today from 2020, even 2021 to now. I know so many people, especially with mental health and things, think that they're at home all by themselves in their struggles. Well, unfortunately, I'd have to say 95% of the world has been through a struggle, but fortunately, there's a amount of people, I'd like to think it was bigger than what it is, but isn't, have gotten to a strength through their struggles. And Bryndee is one of those people that have done that. So I'm super excited. I don't know her whole story, but I'm super excited just for you to share with our listeners, what kind of struggles you've been through, and then the hope that you've gotten to a strength. And then maybe we can give them a few tools, to use along their journey.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Well, first, I just want to say again, thank you for having me on. And we did meet at the Reggae Rise Up Festival in Las Vegas. And when you were telling me about the podcast, I was, first, I'm honored that you invited me on, but I love what you're doing. I love spreading the message of hope. And I think, hope, even the smallest bit of it, can be enough to keep someone hanging on in a really difficult time. And I have overcome, struggles in my life, and I still have to manage them. But it's hope that keeps me going for sure. And, I do have a history of addiction with drugs and alcohol that started at a very young age. And, that was just the product of my environment, which I think a lot of people who struggle with that's something that they relate to. And I didn't know until I was in my 30s that there was actually help for people like me, and my family didn't really believe in getting help. It was all about saving face and protecting an image. And for them, it was more important that we looked okay than actually be okay. And I learned through programs like AA and, therapy and meditation and all these different things that you can find, you can build strength with, that getting help is one of the most courageous things you can do. So it was by, basically completely ruining my life that I was forced to seek help. And it was, the best thing that ever happened for me. Like I said, I've dealt with, not only addictions with drug and alcohol, but I have, the mental addictions that'll take people down, whether it's, over shopping or, talking bad about other people to feel better, all of these things that at the end of the day, just made my world darker. And, the shame built up. I was so weighed down with shame when I finally decided to get help, that I didn't know that it would be possible to get out of the layers of that. Especially when you clear your mind of something that you've been using to numb out or to escape reality, when reality is like so clear, it's very overwhelming. And, fortunately, there are programs like AA, and there's groups of people that can help walk you through that. And mostly because they can say, me too, I've been there before, and this is how we can do this together, so that's, a big part of my story. I also, struggled with, eating disorders and body image issues, and, just being female in general is difficult. I don't know what it's like to be a man. I'm sure, they have their own struggles, but I can tell you, part of that image that I was supposed to uphold as a child was, physically I was supposed to be perfect, and I couldn't live up to that. And so there was a lot of I had a big lack of self-esteem and self-worth, and it made it difficult to, I was good at like putting on a front that everything was okay, because I was well trained at doing that, but I wasn't okay on the inside. And as I became older, I got into, the addiction of power and money, so then I got good jobs, and then it was about being in control, and met someone, got married, had kids. I went to college. I had achievements under my belt, which again they were just the fence. They were just the facade that everything was okay.
Yes.
So in 2017, I finally had kind of met my match. I had gone through different phases of pretty much all kinds of drugs from, starting at the age of 12. So it had been a long run. And I got to a point where everything that the whole castle that I had built had crumbled.
Yes.
The job was gone, the car was gone, the house was gone, and the last thing left were the kids. And that was for safety for them, they were taken. And that was the end for me. That was when I really had to take a look and see, how I could get out of this. And I will say initially it was about, I was going to fake my way through it. I was going to show everyone I was okay. But once I had learned about the program and learned that I was, there was actually a label for what I was. I was an addict, I was an alcoholic, and that was okay because there's a way to live through that. I tried to, keep going on my path for a little bit. And eventually I just crawled into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous and was like, I just begged for help. And it was amazing to see the people rally around me that wanted to help.
Yes.
And they, they in turn taught me how to do that for the next person coming in behind me. And it's a really self-rewarding program to be a part of. And, like where we met, I'm a part of the Nowell Family Foundation, which I'm on the board of directors. I'm the event coordinator or director of events.
Okay.
We go to, any kind of typically reggae festivals to help spread our message. But the foundation itself was the family of Bradley Nowell, who was the lead singer of Sublime. He died in 1996 of a heroin overdose, and he left behind an 11-month-old baby.
Okay.
And of course, his family, his sister, his father, his mom, all these people devastated. What he left on the world was this, he changed music forever. And so there's Sublime fans all around the world. But I know for myself, I'm a huge Sublime fan. And as a, 14-year-old addict listening to that music, I was relating to the things that he was saying.
Right.
And so the foundation is put together by his family, and we do, outreach currently, but we are also raising funds to open a facility, which would be called Bradley's House. And it will be specific to musicians struggling with any addiction, but mostly opioid addiction, which is what Brad struggled with. And what I've found through the years of just the fundraising stage is that we're helping so many people just by spreading this word and taking the taboo away from addiction and saying, there's a lot of us. There's millions of us that have gone through this struggle, and on the other side of that can be an amazing life. And come join us.
Right.
And being at these festivals, which is something that's never been there before, is sort of this safe tent to go to if you're early in sobriety or whatever point in your sobriety, or say you've lost a loved one or you have a family member that's struggling. People come to our booth and in the middle of a music festival, which is always, it's such a great vibe, they're having a good time, but sometimes if you're in early sobriety, it's difficult to stay sober through these things.
Yes, for sure.
So we give them a place that, look, we're having a good time. We're enjoying the music. Life is beautiful with a clear mind.
Yes.
I didn't understand that. I didn't want it because my clear mind told me I wasn't good enough. It told me, I'm ugly, I'm stupid, I'm a failure. And I still struggle with those thoughts. That's the, the mental health that I still have to tackle all the time. But then I have these tools to tell myself, I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm enough. I'm doing my best.
Yeah.
I get out of bed, I brush my hair,
Yeah.
simple things that sometimes feel really overwhelming. But if you just put one foot in front of the other, sometimes that's enough.
Yes.
So that's just, kind of a little bit of my story.
Yeah. And so our stories are very relatable. And that's the other thing, going into the rooms or wherever you're at sharing, when somebody tells your story, sometimes people are like, oh, I'm ashamed of this or this or this or this, but they'll tell you their story and you're like, I did it.
Right.
I can relate. Right. Because
Yeah.
that's the thing, and I started at a very young age too. And it was the same thing. That's my family did. We were an Irish Catholic family. They partied all the time. And that was normal to me, and I started around, I think I had my first cigarette at 11 and my first drink at 12, and so the same thing, it's, you're going through the motions. And when I relate to you so much, because you said, you wear that mask, everything's okay, keep up with the Jones. What was this person going to think? My mom was still like that. She passed away in 2020, but she was still like that in 2020. Like I would dress a certain way, like you saw me at the reggae festival. That's me. I'm just outgoing, fun. And she'd be like, oh, you're going to wear that? I mean, it could be a shirt that's up to here, but she didn't like the color of it. And I'm like, Mom, right? And I was always so worried about what other people thought that it kept me in that. And I did the same as you. I walked around like everything was great, everything was grand, and I was, strong and all of this. And inside, I was a crumbling mess.
Right.
So you said that when your kids got taken, that's when you decided you had to choose a different life.
I mean, I knew at that point, I was always taking care of my kids, and that was even, in the worst of it. But through a series of, bad choices, I knew that I wasn't in a position to, it was, their dad made the decision. And I remember signing that paper saying, I agree that I'm not fit right now to be their mom. And I was everything. I mean, I hadn't been a day away from my kids.
Right.
They were 4 and 6 years old, and I was devastated. I was devastated, and I was really angry at myself because I thought, and I take responsibility for my actions.
Sure.
But again, I didn't know that I had a label for what was wrong with me.
Right.
And that label, being an addict or an alcoholic, there's usually underlying things, like why was I so broken? Why was I trying to hide from reality for so long? And looking, I've peeled back so many layers of the onion going through the steps and going through the program. And it's like, man, there was some pretty ugly things, some pretty dark things that happened, as a kid, that again, with that image being upheld in my family, we weren't going to talk about it. It was like, it didn't happen. We're not going to protect you because then people would know about it. And so just stuff it down. Right. And you can only stuff things down for so long. And it's so great to have a place now that I can, be open about those things. And there's certain details that I only share with, a sponsor. But I was even so broken that I didn't believe that I could accept that I was abused. And so I would say, here's the things that would, have happened. And, you understand that was abuse, right? And I was like, I think, everybody else, has a certain standard, but me, I'm supposed to be different. I'm supposed to be always together, show no emotion. I've been in business for a long time. And so I had to show up with the men, and that meant, sucking it up. And, it takes a toll after a while. After wearing so many different masks, you don't even know who you are anymore. And today I know who I am. I have self-love, I have self-worth. And a big part of it is I enjoy being kind. I enjoy being, a support for other people, and being an example of, a strong person. And by strong, being able to say that I have problems. being strong
right,
is being able to admit your faults,
right,
and that's not what I believed growing up.
right.
I was not to show any weaknesses, and now it's like I got so many weaknesses.
Yes.
I have, I question, of course I have my kids back now, and I look at them and I see that they're well adjusted, and they're doing good in school. We have good communication. They actually don't remember me being,
Oh,
drinking.
that's
They
good.
they ask sometimes, why do you go to Alcoholics Anonymous? You don't drink. And I was like, well, I'm so glad that you don't remember, but
Right.
there was a time. And also I give them, I talk about addiction and alcoholism,
Mhm.
to some degree with my older one a little bit more, but I want them to know the truth. I'm not going to
Yes,
hide anything from them, because
yes.
when they're faced with something, I want them to know that they can come to me and
Mhm.
we can talk about it,
Yes.
and I get what that feeling is going to feel like the first time if they try something, and I can tell them what that road might lead to,
Right,
because they've got the genes. It's a good chance that they have them, but they have a better shot at life
right.
by maybe having a mom that's willing to say, we're going to talk about this. I don't
Yeah,
care what the Joneses think,
right. Yeah.
so
Yeah,
that's.
that's huge.
Mhm.
I've done that with my son too. Actually, my son was about, I want to think he was 13 when I quit. Yeah, 13, I think. 14 when I quit. And I worked a lot. So I was a functioning alcoholic. I worked in a bar,
Mhm.
sports
Yeah.
bar. So he
Mhm.
didn't see me much. So in my mind, I was like, this was even like 7 years ago. I was like, he didn't even know I drank that much.
Right.
Right. So one day he pointed it out to me. He was like, you really believe that, mom? And I was
Mhm.
like, and now he was 14. So of course, he saw it.
Right.
And I'm like, well, yeah. And he's like, yeah, no, I remember. And I'm like, oh, which, I mean, I've been sober 11 years at that time, but it's facing those things though, because all the time I was like, well, he didn't know, you
Right.
know. And when you talked about, I know that you're kind of on a time schedule here, but when you talked about how broken you were and felt worthless and all of that. I remember that feeling, and I think that people need to know that, they see us now and they're like, oh yeah, here they are. But to know that we did go through that struggle, I remember when I quit drinking, I felt worthless, hopeless. No one would love me.
Yeah.
I was ugly, I had nothing to give to the world. The only thing that helped me, honestly, when I first got sober, well, AA helped me because I went to 3 meetings a day for 6 weeks. But my son, he was my rock. He was, they say, and so this can be contradicting and kind of not, you quit for yourself. I
Mhm.
didn't quit for me at that point. I
Right.
quit for my son because I knew I was going to die if I didn't quit. And it was going to be sooner than later. My dad died at 34 from alcoholism. And here
Mhm.
I am 39 and I'm ready to die too. And I
Right.
couldn't picture my son ever finding me like that.
Yeah.
So that was my main reason. So
Right.
did your kids, did that help you too, like to face it?
I mean, every day there's something different that I hold on to stay
Mhm.
sober. But so I initially, I tried to, just hold on to something, and I made it, okay, I'm gonna get sober to try to fix my marriage. And it was already a broken marriage, and and so one small move by him and I relapsed,
Oh.
because I had put all of it on this thing. And
Mhm.
it was like, you hear people say, like, I'll show him. Well, he didn't get the message. I
Right.
ended up, ultimately it was me that got hurt by that, but it was also the best thing that could have happened, because I was very scared when that happened. It was only, 5 days, but it was very difficult to come back again,
Yes.
because of this, the high standards that I set for myself. I failed this
Mhm.
thing that I had really tried to do. And when I came back and I was honest, and again, the people rallied around me and they were like, it's okay, you're going to get through this. Since that day, I have not, I have stayed sober since that day. But that day that I came back, it was for me. And
Yes.
it's like when they talk about, when you're on an airplane, if the oxygen masks are deployed, you put a mask on yourself first
Right.
before
Right.
you do it for someone else, because if you're not okay, you can't
Right.
help somebody else. And so, yes, I do it for my kids, but I do it so I show up as the best version of myself for
Right.
them.
Right.
But it's also, sometimes it's because of the job that I have, and little things. It's about wanting to see that next miracle happen and wanting to be present. I try not to future trip. I just like anyone, I'm a big planner, a big organizer. So I do, always kind of have things, a few feet ahead of me, but
Yeah.
I do want to see what life looks like with, a long-term sobriety and what the result is for my family because of it.
Yes.
And I've walked through, I ended up getting a divorce. I've gone through, really difficult job situations, even, going through the process of a divorcement, a home change. I've been through deaths. I've been through those things that I never thought I could stay sober through. And there were some nights that I was alone. And if anyone was watching, it wasn't pretty. It was me, curled up in a ball in the corner crying. But I made it through sober. And that's, when you come through those dark times, it's like you put another layer of skin on, you just get a little bit stronger. And somebody at some point is going to say, how did you do that? And it's like, oh, I got you. Come on, girl, let's get through this. Because, being so clear-minded, you really feel everything. And sometimes it just feels like every nerve is exposed and it's all hitting you. And sometimes it just feels like, I went through almost a 2-year period where I was just like, is it going to get better? Like, is life going to change? And it was, one small glimpse of hope and all the different things that were piling up. It was almost like I'd been digging through this dirt tunnel and finally a speck of sunlight came through, and then it all just broke through. And, the job changed and life just, if you hang on, the miracles happen. And you just, I have a friend who says, if I had written a script for my life in recovery, I would have sold myself short. And when I think about the things like being a part of the Nowell Foundation, like I said, Sublime is one of my all-time favorite bands. So to have experienced it as a kid, to have watched the death of Bradley Nowell, to have lived with, that music and seeing what it's done for, reggae music and, just the love that it's brought. And then to find myself now being a part of this foundation and trying to honor someone that, I looked up to as a kid who, lost this battle. And it's just a miracle. And how you were saying how God puts these things, this path for us. It's like sometimes I'm doing things and I don't even know, like, why do I keep, going to a certain place? Why do I keep building up, whatever it is, and all of a sudden something happens and it's like, oh, well, at least I have this whole reservoir of stuff that I've been building. It's like there was a reason. I was actually, my ex-husband was in a band for 11 years while we were together, and I became the merchandise manager. So I would run their booth. Well, that booth was placed right next to the Nowell Foundation one day. And I just thought in my head, I have to go over, I have to talk to these people. I have to be a part of what they're doing. And I just kind of attached myself to Kelly Nowell, that's Brad's sister, and just basically begged her to let me be a part of this. And now, she's a huge part of my life. Going through my divorce, the Knowles, they had me over for Thanksgiving and they've made me feel like family. And, I'm honored to be a part of something that particular family is doing, because they're some of the greatest people I've ever met. Bradley Knowles' dad and sister, his son. I mean, you can see probably where Brad's determination is, because these people are so determined to, not let their son or their family members' death be in vain, and to not just sit around and say, somebody should do something about this. Like, hey, why don't we do something about it? So it's been an honor to be a part of that and to be on that journey with them. So
that's so awesome. And like you said, you gave me goosebumps when you were talking about, like, why do I keep ending up at this place? Why does this keep happening? And then eventually it falls into place. You're like, oh, this is why I'm doing this merchandise here, so I could meet them. Right. And then it took you though to get over that fear and have that faith to walk over there. Right. Because that's a lot of times what stops us. We're like, well, like you were talking earlier about the voices in your head. I just got to doing a Bible study group, and it was called The Chatterbox, and it's by Stephen Furtick, the pastor. And he talks about that voice in your head. And even him, when he's talking, he's so true about everything that he still gets that in his head. Like, are you really good enough to get up there and give that sermon today? You know, and I say, I've heard somebody say that the biggest bully that we'll ever have in our life is ourselves.
Yeah,
you
totally.
know? And it's
Totally.
learning how to get over those voices telling us you're not good enough, or, you know, and I do the same thing on a daily basis. I can have a day that I'm just like, so I'm single. I've been single a really long time. And I'm like, why am I still single? Is there something the matter with me? And then I have to remember right now, God's plan is where it's at.
Right.
And I am enough and I am worthy of somebody great and not settling. So it's just having those things in your mind. Now, I always say this on, especially when I'm interviewing somebody with addiction and we've overcome and we're going through it all. I tell people, and I love what you said too, you've dealt with death, you've dealt with divorce, you've dealt with life, right? And it didn't mean you had to go use. I tell people, you don't walk outside, I don't walk outside, and God's got this big bubble around us. So don't let anything break them, because they might go back. You know, and I always talk about that. What kind of tools do you use in the morning, like to get your day started?
I always turn to music. Like before I even get out of bed, I turn music on, because the chatterbox in my head is gonna go. I mean, I don't even have my eyes open yet and it's already going. And, you know, depending on what's going on in my life, sometimes it's, oh, you forgot to do that thing, or it can be really mean. It can be, you know, my voice in my head, and that's after years of just it being that way. That's like, why even get out of bed? You know, what's the point? So I turn on music. It helps me get out of my head. I have, you know, most of the people I surround myself are in recovery. So, you know, sometimes it's a check-in with a friend. You know, it's different every day.
Yes.
Some days, of course, some days are better than others. Some days I wake up and it's like, oh, sun shines, and sometimes it's not, and it's a little bit tougher. And you know, my life, like I said, has gotten better, you know, in the last, you know, 6 months. Things have been really, really great in my life. But during the darker times, I was really clinging, you know, a lot to the music, to my sponsor, to, you know, meetings, church, the gym. And a lot of that, like, I do not want to go to the gym. Why am I here? And, you know, and then I'd leave after working out. And it was like, okay, I feel better. All these different things, it's all therapy, you know, and it's, and, you know, getting to know people at the gym. Like before, I mean, I've always done pretty well as far as like having, you know, a circle of friends. But I would be in classes, or I would do certain things. I would never talk to people because of that fear that you talk about. Well, what if they don't like me? Or what if I don't have, whatever the reasons are that we choose to, you know, and now it's like, I make eye contact and I say hi to every person that I, you know, typically pass. And sometimes I end up in these really cool conversations with people. And I think, like you said, if you go out and experience, if you're willing to go out and experience life, it's going to hurt sometimes, but you're going to really experience life. You know, at the end, I always try to think at the end of my life, what would, you know, if it was written, would it be an interesting enough story, or will I have been, you know, cooped up in a house, stuck in my head, or will I have gone out and done some stuff? So I like the done some stuff story a little bit better. So I try to just get out there and like, too, being an example for my kids. It's like, I want them to experience life, and I want them to be adventurous and, you know, not live in darkness like I did. I want them to, both my boys are musicians. Both of them are, you know, athletic. They both play soccer. So they're getting out there. I watch them, you know, meet friends, or I watch their fearlessness. And I think you said your son is your rock. My kids are such an inspiration to me because they're kind of just cool without trying, you know, and they just have this confidence about them that I admire. And definitely being that rock. You know, my kids are probably the one people, you know, on this earth that I am completely myself with. You know, and it's not always pretty. But I know how to turn around and say, hey, I'm sorry I yelled, and you know, whatever amends I need to make. It's they teach me more than I probably teach them. So
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah. And so like my son, he's gonna be 33 now. So he's you know, I get compliment, he works at a customer service place. I'm always getting messages from people like, Chad is such a nice young man. I'm like, yay,
Mhm.
I did something, I did it right.
Right?
So there was something else I was gonna, oh, when you talked about, so when you got sober and that lasted for 5 days, you know, I like people, I never fortunately relapsed.
Mhm.
And when you already talked a little bit about like how hard it was after you relapse, like now you're not worthy again and all of that.
Mhm.
But I want people to know this too, and maybe you can share a little bit how you feel. Like when we get sober, people think, I've talked to a lot of people, like they're sober for 4 days and they're like, my life's not better yet. And you said
Mhm.
it took 2 years, you know, to really come around to seeing better, right?
Yeah.
And I tell people, like, we don't fix like that. You didn't get into this position in 5 days. It's just like going to
Right.
the gym. You don't get abs in 5 days. You know,
Right.
so can you share a little bit about like that 2 years, like, you know, just some of the tools you used, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. So the 2 years was actually after a few years of sobriety
Okay.
that I really went into a dark time. That was like a low that I had in recovery. The
Oh, okay.
beginning for me, it was definitely an uphill climb.
Mhm.
But for me, the relapse is, I think, what made life in comparison so great.
Mhm.
Because I mean, I was broke. I was at a get well job after having all these achievements. And, I mean, it was, anyone looking at it would be like, how are you even happy? But
Mhm.
there was something inside me that was different, and not everybody has that same experience. A lot of people have their rough patch in the beginning.
Right.
And I think anyone who can walk through difficulty in life and
Mhm.
stay sober through it, that's a huge achievement.
Yes.
It's a huge achievement. And what I can say to anyone going through it, because there was a point, like I said, I did have a little bit of time under my belt, but I went through the thought of, if this is sobriety, I don't want it. I'm
Mm.
miserable. And I
Mhm.
would search through my cupboards at home, knowing there wasn't any alcohol, but I would look for it. And it was short, kind of flashes of thoughts. It wasn't like I didn't stay in that thought very long.
Right.
But sometimes I would just go to bed just to get the day over with. And when the next day came, I was like, okay, I made it through that,
Mhm.
and so I always say, especially going through pain, time really does heal.
Yes.
And if you can give yourself a chance, and in those really difficult moments where you've got two phone calls that you can make, one's going to be to your drug dealer or one's going to be to another member in Alcoholics Anonymous, I hope for you make the right call,
Yes.
because one of them is going to give you an amazing life. It's like the red pill and the blue pill,
Yep.
whatever. These are two different roads, and it's a very difficult choice for an alcoholic. And I
Yeah.
understand that, because
Yes.
I've made that wrong call.
Yes.
I've made the, I guess you could say, easier call, but it takes you straight to hell,
Yes.
and if you have just one single member in this program or has some recovery, reach out to me on Facebook if you want, reach out to somebody. There are people that want to help you,
Yes.
because it's an amazing thing. And I love that we in recovery are uniquely qualified to help the people who have been in the darkest places.
Yes.
And I've had that experience with, there was a girl selling, chocolate bars outside of a bank. And she was saying, she wouldn't even make eye contact with me. She said, I'm selling these. I'm trying to raise money for, the rehab that I'm in. And I stopped her and I go, I'm in recovery too. And you just saw the kind of
Oh,
peace wash over her. And she was like, oh my gosh, I feel like everybody here that I'm talking to is judging me. And I'm just trying to raise money for this thing that, has helped save my life. And I was like, I get it. You have this instant connection with other people in recovery,
mhm.
and we're all over. So if you're struggling, please reach out.
Yeah.
It's the best thing you could do for yourself.
Yes. Awesome. One last thing I wanted to chat about, and then I know you're on your lunch break. Am I running you over?
No, no, you're fine.
Okay. Okay, good. Is you talked about going through the things, but what I really, and you talked about your abuse when you were younger and your counselors or whoever you were talking to saying, that was abuse. And I feel
Mhm.
like a lot of times we people hold on to that and then we start blaming ourselves that we allowed it to happen. And so I have learned just recently more to give myself grace. You know, we have to give ourselves grace. So
Mhm.
listening to you, I believe that you have given yourself a lot of grace, like the things that you
Yeah.
went through, you know, I feel like we get angry at ourselves that we, like you said, even when you relapse, like, oh
Mhm.
man, I'm so mad at
Mhm.
myself. But at that time, that's what you were going through, you know? So
Right.
do you use grace at all?
Oh, I do now,
Yeah.
but that was part of the self-love, to
Yes.
give yourself grace, you need to love yourself enough to do that.
Yes.
And it took a while, in the beginning, there was a struggle, and, that was my, like you just mentioned, the relapse. It was like, how could I do this?
Mhm.
How could I, everybody else can make this mistake. They're okay, but I can't do this. I am a failure. And, now looking back, I still make a ton of mistakes. I don't know that a day go by that I don't make some sort of mistake. And I'll beat myself up pretty bad. Like you said, the worst bully is yourself. That's
Yes.
definitely true for me. But I try to give myself grace, and that's the positive self-talk that I try to say, did you do your best? Did you really try? Just you've learned from this, move on. But with, the abuse in mind, yes, as a kid, it was all my fault.
Right.
It was, so much of it, I blame myself for. Maybe if I was better, this wouldn't have happened.
Yes.
Maybe if I was, X, Y, or Z, I could have fixed everything. And, I went into adulthood with that same mentality of my family,
Right.
why aren't things better in my own home? It's all my fault. I should have been fixing this. And realizing that it's not all on me. There's
Mhm.
only so much that I can do. And yeah, definitely giving myself more of that grace.
Grace.
Um,
Yeah.
because otherwise, I mean, like I said, I make mistakes all the time. And
Mhm.
and going back to my kids, it's like when I make a mistake with them, when I'm short-tempered, and I go back and I say, hey, I that you guys didn't deserve that. I didn't, mean to yell. They give me grace. You
Right.
know what I mean?
Right.
My kids give me grace. And again, that kind of gives me like, okay, if they can forgive me, maybe I can forgive myself,
Right. Right. And
so
that's key.
it's a working muscle, like you talked
Yes.
about. You can't just go to the gym once and get abs. You've got to work those muscles over and
Yes.
over until it becomes
Yes.
just a working part of the mind. So
Exactly, exactly. They become a habit and this is the way that we live. But the
right.
thing is too, is like when you said that, you know, you're still mad, you still talk to yourself like you do, but now you have the tools to use to forgive
Mhm.
yourself, to give yourself grace, to
Mm,
notice that you did that, right? Like yelling at
right,
your kids. I mean, I used to yell at my son and walk out of the room and I never thought twice about it.
right.
And now if I do that same thing, I've even had a conversation with somebody that I've snapped a little bit and I'm like,
Mhm.
oh, and I went to the bathroom, came back out and said, I am so sorry that I was like that. And they'll be like what? And I'm like, just know that
Yeah.
I forgave myself for being like that to you,
Right.
you know? So,
Well, and
and
we're
I think
human,
we're
right?
human. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the thing. You know, people, like I said, they're like, you're so strong. And the thing, like you talked about, still going through the things, you know, I went through a lot of death and things in the last 18 and a half years, and I didn't have to use, but I'm
Mhm.
still not going to hide that I hurt. And I'm not going to hide, you know, I put that, I have that, you're going to see my Facebook is always positive, always uplifting, but it's always real too. You
Right.
know, they're going to see that. And I'll do live videos like my life's not rainbows and unicorns, you guys trust me. You know, we all go
Right.
through the things, but it's a choice on a daily basis of how we're going to get through it.
Definitely. Well, and at this point, I kind of love the adrenaline of walking through fear.
Yeah.
Like I had to do a speech at work recently, and I don't mind public speaking. I have, some training in it, but it was afterwards, it was kind of an adrenaline rush to have
Yeah.
gotten up and done something that I was fearful of. Um,
Mhm.
and I was like, that was kind of cool. I want to, try more of that.
Yes.
So, sometimes facing our fear, and like I talked about, I think courage is awesome, because courage is being scared to death and doing it because
Yes.
it's the right thing to do,
Yes.
or it, accomplishes what you're trying to do. And I've been told when I've walked through something that I was courageous, and I was like, really? Because I was terrified, or I was, I didn't look good, I looked like I was a mess. that's not what courage is. Courage isn't being all put together and having no fear. It's actually the opposite, right?
Exactly. Yes,
Um,
yes, for sure.
yeah.
Well, this was awesome. I'm so
Yeah.
excited to hear, how everything goes with the rehab center that you guys are trying to open in the Nowell Foundation and all of that.
Yeah.
I'll put all those things in the link here, and, you guys can reach out, and maybe, if you have
Awesome.
the means to support or whatever. I know you're out in California, but that doesn't mean we can't support from Ohio and Michigan.
Absolutely.
Or wherever you're at.
I mean, it's a worldwide condition that we're
Yes.
working with, and so any way we can help. We're not sure where the house will be when it opens.
Right.
It could end up on the East Coast, but we have Bradley's House as a group on Facebook where it's really just about spreading positivity, and people go on there when they're struggling. There is Sublime related things that are posted on there. If people want to donate, they can go to the Nowell Foundation website or online, anywhere. Just even helping spread the word about what we're
Yes.
trying to do is a huge help. So I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to talk about it on here too. So
Awesome. Well, Bryndee, I was super excited I met you. I always tell
Yeah, me
people
too.
that you're my friend forever now. You're stuck with me.
Awesome.
So
I love it.
I always tell,
Likewise.
I met another gentleman that I actually interviewed the day after, 2 days after the festival.
I saw that.
Did you see it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was
Mhm.
so cool. So
That's
I
awesome.
love that. So,
Mhm.
and that's the thing, you guys just in life, just be on the lookout for people, you
Yeah.
don't know when you said you make eye contact and you smile, you don't know what impact you can have on somebody's life that day just because you did that. I mean, they could be going through something and your
Mhm.
high or your smile, or,
Mhm.
I go up to people and sometimes I know they think I'm weird. I'll be like, I really love your outfit. Or I'll look at
Totally.
somebody and say, you are absolutely beautiful.
Mhm.
And, then I can always kind of tell how their kind of self-esteem is, because the answer they give me. And then if they give me that answer that I feel a little bit of a way with them, I tell them, don't ever let anybody tell you you're not beautiful.
Yeah.
And then they'll be like, oh, thank you. Because
Yeah.
there's probably somebody telling them that. And it could be
Yeah.
themselves,
Right.
and we can change
Absolutely.
lives just by being kind,
It's true. And
Yeah,
it's contagious. It's
it is.
contagious. So you
It
hope
really
that it
is.
spreads to someone else after you do it. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, everybody, Bryndee, thank you so much. I
Thank
was
you.
maybe we'll interview again in a few months just to see how everything's going,
Yeah,
but
that'd be awesome.
definitely we'll stay in contact with you. And everybody, thank you so much for getting on Hope. If you're at home and you're struggling, you feel like you're all alone, just know that you're not, and reach out. You can reach out to me, Bryndee. There's all kinds of help out there. Just, reach out. Don't be ashamed. Don't be afraid, because we've all been through struggles and we've gotten to a strength. So, Bryndee, once again, thank you so much. You have an amazing day.
you.
Okay.
Thank you. You
Thank
too.
you.